Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory is taking steps to enhance the ease of doing business by streamlining revenue collection and administration. Now, the move aims to simplify processes for businesses operating in the FCT, reducing bureaucratic delays and improving efficiency. This initiative is part of broader efforts to make the FCT a hub for commerce and development in the country. Acting FCT-IRS Chair Micheal Ango joins me now to discuss this further. Good morning, Micheal. You're welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Great, you're most welcome. Just a couple of months ago, we saw a 53.5% spike in collections and remittances from the FCT-IRS. That's in relation to the first half of 2023, of course. What can this growth be attributed to?
Well, thank you once again for welcoming me. I think I would like to start from the overall purpose for which the organization or the FCT-IRS exists. As you're aware, Abuja is a very unique city in the sense that it straddles both the federal government and, it has characteristics of a state government. So it is it is part of the federal government, but it also has the characteristics of a subnational or a state. And in order to enhance the ability of the FCT to be properly administered, the FCT-IRS was created to basically oversee tax administration, revenue administration in the FCT. So it's existed for 10 years now, and part of what you're seeing in terms of some of the results that you're seeing is the effort that has been put over the last decade or so in terms of creating structures, systems, to ensure that the FCT-IRS is able to do what other state revenue boards do for their states. Of course, in terms of what we collect in FCT, over the last decade, FCT has raced from zero to actually becoming the second highest, revenue-generating agency at subnational level in Nigeria, second only to Lagos for obvious reasons. But for me, those results are really just a scratch as to where we want to go ultimately. But we understand that for us to be able to take the FCT to where we want it to be, there are certain things that have to be in place. And I think the first thing is to ensure that the people, the residents of the FCT, the businesses in the FCT, the government agencies in the FCT, everyone who resides in the FCT and who has an obligation to pay taxes in the FCT does so in an atmosphere or environment that is conducive, whether they're private individuals, whether they're business, whether they're manufacturers. And so that's why we've had this focus, as you said in your introduction, on ease of doing business. The whole idea is to start from the perspective of the taxpayer, or what we call a customer-centric view for us in tax administration, or more appropriately, I would say revenue administration in the FCT. So for us, the taxpayers, who we refer to as our customers, are the central focus. And so we've tried to ensure that whatever we do, we put them first. We look at what their needs are. We look at what their concerns are, what their challenges are, and we try to address those challenges. So like I said, those results that you see are really a fruit of some of the efforts, which I still believe we can do a lot much more better. And, I'll be able to speak to some of the things that we have done and we'll still be doing in terms of improving the taxpayer experience for Abuja residents.
Very well detailed, and surely this will require all hands on deck. But looking at processes now, in what ways will harmonizing revenue collection and administration in the FCT improve the ease of doing business for companies operating there?
Yeah, very good. So I must confess, it's this whole idea of harmonizing taxes is not a novel thing. It's not exclusive to the FCT. You must know about the work of the Presidential Committee, the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. I was a member of that committee prior to my appointment as acting chief executive of the FCT-IRS. So this is a trend that is really, it's in terms of, if you look at mega cities globally, there aren't very many cities where you'll go and you find different agencies of government collecting different taxes. And so for us in FCT, we've looked at it. Yeah, the FCT, like I said, is both an creation of the federal government, but it also has, very strong features of a subnational. The FCT has, for example, a civil service headed by a head of the civil service. We have a judiciary here. We have other structures that mirror that of a state. So we want to ensure, for example, that if you are going to have any interaction with the FCT administration, and not just in terms of taxes, but any interaction at all, whether it be land issues, whether you want to pay some form of permits and all of that, that this experience for you is a very seamless one. And so the whole idea is to sit down with all the MDAs, which we have done already, and say to them, look, listen, in terms of what you do, in terms of your core responsibilities as an MDA, why don't you focus on those responsibilities, i.e. regulation? But in terms of collection of revenue items, revenue heads, you can cede that to the FCT-IRS. And this is backed by law anyway, so it's not something that we're trying to do arbitrarily. Interestingly, we've also been able to bring the area councils on board. We have 6 area councils in Abuja, and I can tell you that over the last 1 month, I've met severally with the area council chairman. They're all aligned, under the leadership of His Excellency, the Minister of the FCT. We've all agreed that we want to make the FCT a model city. We want the FCT to be a city where people can come in, do business freely, and be able to comply with their obligations seamlessly. So we're putting in place, technology which is going to help you, for example, as a business owner, sit in the comfort of your, office, or wherever you're doing your business, and be able to receive your assessments electronically, whether by email, by text, or by some other means. You can log into the platform which we have created and which we're going to introduce very shortly, where you would find out what your requirements are, and then you can get your tax or revenue assessments, you can pay, you'll get your receipts. And so all these incidences where people are driving around the FCT and, some people jump out in front of you, very cool, those things will be history in a very short time to come. The whole idea is to ensure that in a very short while to come, and we're looking at the next 6 to 12, maximum 18 months, every process that has to do with revenue collection in the FCT is going to be automated, is going to be centralized. You're going to have one single point of contact, whether you want to pay for your land permits, whether you want to pay, if you're running a business, if you're running a hospital, you want to pay your permits, you're running a school, you want to pay for, your licensing fees and all of that. All of this will be centralized such that, people can focus on what is important to them, run your businesses, but not have to then run from office to office, wanting to pay 5 naira here, another 10 naira there, and then having different agencies of the FCT knocking on your door and asking you if you have complied or not.
Yeah, it all certainly sounds extremely progressive and, most undoubtedly will be of huge benefit. But, Michael, we've also seen the President Bola Tinubu express the intention to drive fiscal independence for all subnationals, which you've alluded to very briefly now. In what ways will the FCT-IRS further deepen the government's efforts in this regard?
Yeah, so interestingly, if you do recall, the Minister of the FCT, His Excellency Nyesom Wike, at the very onset of this administration, had gone to the President and gotten approval, for the FCT to actually have its own Treasury single account. And so in terms of driving fiscal independence, I can tell you that the FCT is operating, with the mindset that in the next few years, we are not going to be dependent on what we get from the federal government in terms of revenue allocation. Those allocations will largely be things that the minister would want to use for capital projects. In terms of the recurrence, in terms of overheads, in terms of paying salaries, what we want to do is to be able to fund that from our internally generated revenue, from our taxes, our levies and fees. And so to achieve that, we're going to strengthen the administration in the FCT-IRS. Like I said, a lot of the agencies of government within the FCT are already aligned. We've had meetings with them, we've signed MOUs, and all of this has happened in the last 1 year under the direction of the minister. So there is a commitment, to use a cliche, there's the political will to ensure that the FCT-IRS, or the FCT itself as a whole, is fiscally independent. We had looked at certain states in Nigeria and also globally. We had looked at some cities, and we've decided that we want to mirror ourselves after those cities. Of course, in Nigeria, I can say without contradiction, the only state that, in terms of what they collect, is ahead of the FCT is Lagos. And, I've said to my good friend and senior brother, the chairman of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, that he should watch his back, because we're serious about making FCT-IRS, FCT rather, a totally independent, entity within the substructure of the Federation of Nigeria. And I must say, that I've gotten total support from the Honorable Minister of the FCT, who has shared his vision with me and he's given me an idea of what he wants to do. As an aside, I like to mention this. The FCT will be 50 years in 2026, and the Minister has shared certain things with me in terms of what he wants the FCT to look like in 2026. And so he needs the money. We all need the money to do those things, to build infrastructure, to improve the entire experience for people, residents, and visitors in the FCT. So in terms of building our fiscal independence and, ensuring that we can fund our activities, the FCT-IRS is certainly taking the lead. And I'm sure in a few months or weeks, you'll be hearing complaints about us, positive complaints, of course, because we're going to be knocking on doors, asking people to comply and to ensure that as Nigerians and as residents of the FCT, we pay our fair share of taxes so that we can provide a city that everyone will be proud of.
Positive complaints. I've never heard a better oxymoron. But, let's look at the other end of the spectrum, Micheal, when we're looking at the taxpayers. What specific challenges have businesses in the FCT faced in the past owing to the revenue collection system, and how different do these bottlenecks look now?
Yeah, I think the first challenge really is the fact that we've really not been light in terms of taxpayer enlightenment, taxpayer education, and even the taxpayer interaction. Of course, there are many reasons for this. The FCT-IRS is actually a small organization in terms of personnel. But thankfully, with technology today, we don't have to be present physically to be able to pass information across to taxpayers. So the other thing we're going to be doing significantly is use of technology. Today, as I speak, we have a very interactive portal where you can go, and if you visit that portal, www.fctirs.gov.ng, you can register as a taxpayer, you can get your tax assessments, you can make your payments, you can apply for your tax clearance certificates, and we have a functioning, contact center where you can call and ask for information. But more importantly for me is what I have termed 4 Ps, so those 4 Ps are really about people, about platforms, processes, and partnerships. Even though those 4 Ps are, more local to the FCT-IRS, but in terms of the larger FCT, these 4 Ps are also going to be important. So the whole idea is that we are ensuring that our people, whether it be within the organizations or the taxpayers, are the most important, items on the menu, as it were. They are the people who, everything we do has to be geared towards providing service. And then we're going to create platforms, technology, use of technology. We're even going to invest in providing systems for other sister agencies within the FCT-IRS so that there's a technology, there's linkage in terms of all of the agencies. And, people who interact with one agency will not have a different experience if they move to another agency. And of course, the processes will be seamless, they'll be clear, they'll be transparent. We're going to do away with bureaucracy. The times when people will say, they applied for X or Y and it took them 6 months, 9 months, they're going to be a thing of the past. More importantly, also, we're going to have very strong partnerships, interactions with government agencies, non-governmental agencies, international organizations. Abuja, as you know, is the capital city of Nigeria. It is the first point of contact for a lot of visitors who are coming from outside Nigeria. So we want to make Abuja, right from the airport, you're going to see the presence of what the FCT administration is doing. And in terms of what we're doing to ensure that, there's a seamless revenue administration in FCT, you're going to see it for visitors, for people who come in. As I said, in another 2 years or so, we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the city. And I want to tell you that by the time 2026 comes around, Abuja should be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with many of those cities that you and I usually visit and marvel.
Right, a lot to look forward to, it sounds, and we certainly will be keeping our eyes peeled on all this great work and promises. Micheal, I want to thank you so much. Unfortunately, time is not on our side and we have to wrap up, but many thanks for joining us on the Global Business Report.